It was almost bittersweet seeing the way last season kind of played out and thinking to myself, well, I'm going to have to find a new whipping boy in the National Football League because the Cleveland Browns aren't going to be the skid marks anymore. They're going to be relevant. They're going to matter. They might enjoy even a little bit of success. To me, if anything, 2019 has almost been like the gift I didn't deserve, but I wanted so badly. Because success did not happen. And if anything, you can most certainly argue that a team that actually had some level of expectations that woefully underdelivered to them is every bit the level of skid mark behavior as just being flat out freaking bad and the worst team in the league. I mean, you think about it. The Cleveland Browns hired John Dorsey to be their general manager. This is going to be the change. He knows what the hell he's doing. Does he? Does he? Oh, Freddie Kitchens as the offensive coordinator the second half of the season. My God, we got to give him the head job. Do ya? Do ya? Now, here's what I know. Is that when you talk about the Cleveland Browns, they have a history of turning and burning and churning and burning through head coaches and leadership, and every 2 to 3 years of making the same decisions, firing people, hiring the same types of people, the true definition of insanity. Do the same things over and over and over again and expect history to be any different. And it won't be. The results will still be the same. So I'd be a little remiss if I didn't say that this is more typical skid mark behavior to talk about them firing a head coach after one full season on the job. Because that has been a contributing factor in the problems of this Browns organization for the past 2 decades. A head coach would get 1 or 2 years, and then they were quickly shown the door when there was progress not to be made or not to be shown. And I get that. And generally, I'm not a fan of firing a head coach after one season because it gives you very little opportunity, very little time to do anything whatsoever, to establish a program, to build an identity, to build your own infrastructure. It's a really hard way to judge somebody based off of 1 year. But there are those times where it is so glaringly obvious that somebody is incompetent, that somebody is not cut out for the job, and that somebody has no business being in that position. And by continuing to allow that person to be in a position for a second year, or by God, even a third year, the results aren't going to be any different. And when I look at Freddie Kitchens, that to me is a clear-cut example of what I just said. You see a guy that's in over his head. You see a guy who's not ready for prime time as an NFL head coach. You basically promoted a guy based off of half a season as the offensive coordinator. Like, that's not good. That's typically not how it should be done. All why? Because Baker showed you a little bit in 2018. Well, how'd that work out this year? The Cleveland Browns are a mess, and you could argue just as big of a mess as when they're going 0-16 under Hugh Jackson. Because at least when they go 0-16 under Hugh Jackson, you know Hugh Jackson sucks, and you know the team sucks. So you expect them to deliver to expectations, and oh, by God, in that season of 2017, did they ever? But here is a team that spent a number 1 overall pick on a quarterback in Baker Mayfield, has one of the leading rushers in the league in Nick Chubb, has Jarvis Landry at one of the wide receiver positions, so already has some talent in terms of offensive skill players, then goes out there and makes the big trade for Odell Beckham Jr. You don't make that type of trade to sit there and finish outside of the playoff race. You make that type of deal, you make that type of trade to put you over the top to get your ass into the playoffs. You have Myles Garrett, and when he's not swinging helmets at Mason Rudolph, he's a dominant edge rusher. You know, you spend a top 5 pick on Denzel Ward. Like, your team is supposed to be better, and ultimately they're not. And I don't see where allowing Freddie Kitchens to stay another year is going to help that, considering Odell Beckham Jr.'s production has completely sucked this year, totally underwhelming. He's just another guy now. That's how bad it is in Cleveland. Is Odell Beckham Jr. is a Jag, just another guy, and struggling to even get up to 1,000 receiving yards. You got Nick Chubb, one of the leading rushers in the league, but yet you forgot to pay attention to your offensive line. How are we going to replace Joe Thomas after his sudden retirement before last season? Oh, let's just not do that at all. Now that falls on John Dorsey. But what falls on Freddie Kitchens to me is the incredibly poor game planning, the incredibly poor play design, the lack of discipline and control on the team, and most specifically of all, the significant regression in year 2 of Baker Mayfield. Now, some of that, sure, could probably be on Baker a little bit. After his rookie year, he probably started buying into his own BS a little bit too much, and I'm sure that's the case, especially with the number of commercials he's in. You can sit there and look back on it now, and you can say, hey, buddy, you should have spent a little less time recording commercials and a little more time working at your craft. But nonetheless, it's clearly obvious he's been put in horribly bad positions by the play caller, the shot caller, who happens to be the head coach, Freddie Kitchens. Like, this is how bad it is. You went from a team that's thinking that you might be able to make the playoffs this year to the Baltimore Ravens under second-year quarterback Lamar Jackson, mind you, drafted 31 picks after Baker Mayfield. They're talking about number 1 seed in the AFC. They're talking about Super Bowl contender. And then you're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who in some ways are a mess this year on the offensive side of the ball, specifically at the quarterback position. Are you kidding me? Mason Rudolph and Ducky Hodges? That just sounds like jobber jabroni territory, and yet here are the Steelers going into Week 17 with a chance potentially at the playoffs. And both of those teams were supposed to be looking up at the Cleveland Browns this year, and it didn't happen. You got Odell and perhaps other guys wanting to get the hell out of town. I can't imagine Baker's very happy because he is stoked this year. Absolutely stoked. And coming from a Bears fan like me that knows what it's like to have crappy quarterback play, I promise you, Baker Mayfield right now looks every bit the bust that Mitchell Trubisky does in this season. You got to think about this. If you're John Dorsey, do you really trust Freddie Kitchens, who in theory, you could say you put enough talent in place to be thinking about the playoffs? You're not playing for anything in Week 17. Season is over. What do you have to gain by running the risk of allowing Freddie Kitchens to be the head coach for another season? What are you going to do? Piss off Odell Beckham Jr. even more to the point where he becomes a malignant cancer in that locker room and on that team, and he ultimately gets traded and you get significantly less back in return because not only have you made him look bad, you've also put him in a situation where his numbers aren't as good, so people don't think he can still make the same type of impact. You're going to piss off Jarvis Landry? And sit there and have Nick Chubb looking to be like, what the hell am I handling the rock this many times for? I'm going to get myself killed, run myself into the ground, and then these idiots probably won't honor me with the second contract. What the hell am I doing that for? And then most importantly of all, you're running the risk of ruining Baker Mayfield. Like, it can't get much worse than this for the Cleveland Browns. You had the number 1 overall pick in 2018. You gambled on the 6-foot-tall quarterback from a spread system in Oklahoma in Baker Mayfield. Because he had leadership, because he had swag, because he had this, because he had that. The bottom line is this, is if he continues to regress, you have nothing. And you become the skid marks of the league for a significantly longer period of time to come. That's what has to be thought about here. Does Freddie Kitchens coming back and coaching in 2020 give you confidence in thinking that you're going to get more out of Odell Beckham Jr., that you're going to better utilize and conserve Nick Chubb at key times, that you're actually going to get more and better out of Baker Mayfield? And the answer is, if you have any brain matter in your head whatsoever, is hell to the no. And if that's the case, then he must go. I know, again, this speaks to the problem of the Browns over the years. They give up too quickly on coaches every year or two, and this certainly is not ideal. But you are in panic mode right now. because Baker took a big step back in 2019, working with the same guy he was working with in 2018. And don't sit there and tell me, I saw a report out there, I think it was, talking about, well, Freddie Kitchens might be safe because the Browns' expectations within the building was they might win 7 or 8 games. You won 7 games last year! You don't sit there and make the damn deal for Odell Beckham Jr., along with having Baker Mayfield go from his rookie season to his second season, expecting to win 7 games! You make those type of moves, and you have those type of hopes for a team that you expect to win 10 games or more. Freddie Kitchens has shown he's incompetent, he's in over his head, he's not ready for prime time. You want to run the risk of letting him be there in 2020 and potentially ruining Baker Mayfield forever. That's what it comes down to. If you're John Dorsey and you're comfortable with that, then sure, go right ahead. Continue to be one of the skid marks of the league. If you're not, though, the time to make a change is right here, right now. 'Tis better to make the move too soon than a year too late. Kitchens has shown you enough. He's not the guy. Don't let him bring your entire organization down in flames just because you didn't want to fire him after year 1.